Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this Lunch and Learn with net.America, all about building stronger registered apprenticeship programs. My name is Jackie Murphy. I'm a research specialist at ICF, which is a management consulting firm based in Virginia. And we work with net.America to expand and promote registered apprenticeships. And this is just one of the many things that we do. So we're so excited that you're all able to join us. We have a very exciting presenter and speaker today. And we'll have a lot of time throughout the hour to hear from the speaker, have a Q&A, and then hopefully connect with some points of contact and resources towards the end of the session. Since we have a mixed audience, and this will also be posted online after the session, give a little bit of background since there's different levels of understanding and incoming awareness about apprenticeships, but they're obviously a very great workforce development opportunity. But we know apprentices need support to enter their programs, complete their programs, and that's really the focus of the session today, is about how can we support apprentices, support pre-apprentices, not only to complete their programs, but to, springboard from those programs into like really successful, thriving careers. So that's the goal for today. And I don't want to take too much time talking. So I'm going to go over some housekeeping with the Hopin Ring Central platform. We're going to try to field as many questions as we can at the end of the session. So please drop any questions you have in the chat feature of the platform, and we'll collect those at the end. And you can also ask questions directed at net.America through social media. So we'll field all those, and then we can run through them towards the end of the session. And without further ado, I want to introduce our speaker. Carol Phillips is the Executive Director of West Virginia Women's Work, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing education, employment, and economic equity for women, particularly in skilled trades and other non-traditional careers. With a background in civil engineering and lots of experience in workforce development, Carol has led this organization's expansion across the state, including its federally registered pre-apprenticeship programs in construction and manufacturing. So we're also going to touch on the bridge between pre-apprenticeships and registered apprenticeship programs. Carol is a strong advocate for wraparound supports as essential to retention and success in apprenticeship programs, and has developed statewide mentorship, safety, and supportive services models that directly address the unique barriers underserved workers face. She brings real-world experience, policy insight, and a hands-on approach to workforce innovation in Appalachia. So thank you so much for joining us, and I will turn it over to you.
So I'm Carol. I'm with West Virginia. Women Work. And today I want to talk about building stronger registered apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships, just by raising awareness, the support services that you can offer as part of these programs, and some strategies that we've implemented in our Step Up construction pre-apprenticeship and manufacturing pre-apprenticeships that have really increased our retention rates. They've empowered some amazing success stories. And for the employers that hire our graduates, we've really just gotten amazing feedback that they are prepared and they're ready to work. And I truly think that's mainly because of the support services that we offer. So let's jump into it. Next slide, please. So what I want to talk about today, the main objectives really are, how do you raise awareness for registered apprenticeships and the importance of registered apprenticeships for workforce development. I'm going to probably call them RAPs throughout the rest of the presentation here. So if you hear me say RAP, that's registered apprenticeship. I also want to highlight the role that supportive services play in RAP success and in the worker's success, whether that's in a pre-apprenticeship program, registered apprenticeship program, they're equally important. I also have some real world strategies and best practices that we've used that are have been really successful in just partnering with community organizations has just really made us better, and I hope our community partners better. And I want to equip everybody with ideas to implement, use in your shops, support your apprentices, and really get your creative juices flowing when it comes to how you can support folks that are in these roles. Next slide. So, what is a registered apprenticeship? Registered apprenticeships are federally recognized apprenticeship programs. And I'll say too, this isn't just for, I guess the information today isn't just for registered apprenticeships. These can be for non-registered apprenticeships. These can be for any entry-level program, training programs. So carry this out into the work that you're doing. But RAPs combine paid on-the-job training and classroom instruction. So a lot of the skilled trades RAPs we work with, for example, we'll see that Monday through Thursday, they're working those long construction shifts, maybe 10, 12 hours a day. They're working with experienced journey workers and masters in their field. They're getting paid. They're getting that hands-on real world experience. And then maybe on a Friday or maybe in an evening after work, they're going to get their classroom instruction. So they know all the math and the bookwork and all of the good stuff that goes into making, a trained skilled worker. RAPs also lead to an industry recognized credential. So again, a good example in skilled trades is in most every state, if you are an electrician, you want to be a journeyman electrician at that level, there's a licensure, it's a credential, and it allows you to do certain types of work that other folks can't do. So that's just one of many examples of what a credential can look like. Registered apprenticeships are also built with employer partnerships and are very structured in their advancement. That could look like, after 1 year of training, are the credentials and the knowledge that the apprentice should have. In year 2, here's the pay structure and the credentials that employee would have, and so on. So apprenticeships are typically much more structured than just a new hire green employee. If you want to find out some more about that, there was a report that came out for earn and learn opportunities and how it benefits employers and workers. And I think in this, we're really going to focus on how it benefits the employee and how you can support that employee. I really hope net.America, I'm sure they will do a lunch and learn on the benefits to employers because they are so many. Next slide, please. So a lot of folks don't know about registered apprenticeships. I know my focus is on the skilled trades. A lot of the things I'll talk about today will be on, skilled trades apprenticeships or manufacturing apprenticeships. But we're seeing more and more dental hygienists, nursing, education. There are so many different apprenticeship programs, but folks really aren't aware of them. And why does that matter? Well, if communities aren't aware, you aren't going to get applicants to your job, right? So registered apprenticeship, just like any other position, you really need to be able to recruit from the pools of workers and candidates that you're looking to hire and keep long-term with your company. There are a lot of misconceptions about registered apprenticeships, specifically those in the skilled trades. I'm sure growing up, many of you heard, oh, you don't want a job being, a plumber. That's really, really hard work. And so people may have been misinformed about what the work looks like. Gender roles, you may have never even been told what that work looks like at all, or that you're able to do that. So letting folks know that, these aren't for one specific type of person. They're not just union jobs, they're private industry jobs. They're only for low paying jobs. That is absolutely not true at all. Or that they're limited to industries like the construction or manufacturing industry. Like I said, we're seeing so much more of these in educational settings, in healthcare settings, and with civic organizations. So really all of those add up to awareness gaps. Those awareness gaps for the people that are looking for new careers, are trying to find ways to obtain education, to be a skilled worker in any industry or trade, they have missed opportunities. And those are missed opportunities for their economic mobility. So there are hundreds of thousands of workers out there that are looking for a new trade, a new career, educational opportunities, something that is closer to home for them, something that meets their, personal and professional goals more. And they are just not aware of these apprenticeship programs. And so they think, well, I'm not qualified for that. I can't go back to college for that. I don't have time for, this program to learn this new industry. And they're just totally unaware that there are registered apprenticeship programs that are earn while you learn models, and that they can actually change careers and have a much better quality of life. Next slide. So once folks are aware of apprenticeship programs, why might they not take advantage of those programs? I know for me, the registered apprenticeship programs we work with and the employers we work with, when we are out advocating for these and we're telling folks that are unaware of these programs about them, they're shocked. And they say, I could be making, $65,000 a year this time next year. Yes, you absolutely can. So why doesn't everybody jump onto those opportunities? And that's really what we're here to talk about today. There are so many barriers that folks can experience. There are just a few on the screen here: lack of childcare, transportation issues. They might have some financial insecurity, maybe educational, mental health, substance use, gaps in technology, and just limited mentorship or guidance, unaware of these programs. So these are just some of the many barriers that people may have that could prevent them from signing up and succeeding in a registered apprenticeship program. I will say these are probably the top few that we most often see. Depending on your region, it might look different. Where I'm at in West Virginia, we don't have large public transportation infrastructure. We're known for our mountains. The roads are windy. It might only be 10 miles to get to your job site, but it could take you 40 minutes to take those back roads. So transportation issues where I'm at are a bit more hard to deal with than maybe in an urban area that has, bus, metro, trains, and other public infrastructure available. So these barriers can be highly localized to your city, state, region, but also to very individualized for the person herself. And that leads me into my next slide. So, what can you do to help folks overcome these barriers? So, if someone is, struggling with childcare, as an apprenticeship program or a support services provider or a pre-apprenticeship program provider, you could work to offer childcare vouchers. Maybe cost is an issue. You could partner with local childcare agencies that would give priority enrollment to children of your apprentices. If transportation is an issue, you could use gas cards, bus passes. You could offer things like that. You can also offer rideshare incentives and programs between your employees. If finances are an insecurity, I know in the trades, a lot of them you have to have your own tools. I don't know if anybody has recently brought a very nice pair of boots, but those are, sometimes $200, $300 for work boots. If you are in certain industries, you need fire retardant clothing and other specialty clothing. So providing the tools, the boots, the PPE, or vouchers or reimbursement for folks to obtain those, that is one way you can help them. Case management and peer support, just general mentorship. I think this is probably one of the more important things, and it's the secret sauce of what we do at West Virginia Women Work with our programs. Just talking with the folks and connecting them with people in the community or people within your organization or your company that maybe have a similar barrier, have overcome a similar barrier, offer solutions to that. Stipends for attendance or incentives that might help folks with technology gaps. An example would be, your training is offered virtually. It's mandatory training that they have to do, from home, and they don't have access to a computer or the internet. So offering a stipend or an attendance incentive for that person might help them overcome that barrier. Next slide, please. So why would you do this? It sounds so far. I think some people will hear this and say, well, that is a lot of, work. It might be. I'm going to tell you why it's not. But as an employer, as a training provider, registered apprenticeship program, folks need these. When you provide supportive services, you will increase your retention and completion rates. People don't fail because you don't have a good program, or they're not learning anything, or they're not earning a good paycheck. People fail because getting over those barriers are really hard. I know I personally, and I think a lot of folks can remember when you're young, even you don't have a car to get to work, but you need the job to pay for the car, and you're in that cycle. That's tough to deal with. And that's just one of many examples that are common for folks to deal with. So if you can provide supportive services, you will see an increase in your retention and completion rates. You're going to reduce your dropouts for non-academic reasons. So again, it goes back to the car example. Maybe I enroll in an apprenticeship. I love my job, but my car breaks down and I just can't make it to work anymore. Maybe I was a superstar first year apprentice. I was one of the better employees, but my car broke down and now I can't make it there. So that's a non-academic reason for dropping out. Building trust and the community engagement. We'll talk more about, partnering with communities, support organizations to provide those sort of supportive services. It's great to be more involved with your community, and it just works well for the businesses and all the folks in the community. You also build trust with your apprentices, and they turn into long-term employees. Folks remember if you were able to help them out with their first set of work boots, when you're able to, help them get into a childcare facility that makes their commute a little easier, when you're able to help them with housing or recovery programs. Those are deeply personal. Most barriers are deeply personal. And so just building trust with that person. And then just to help historically marginalized folks enter those trades. Again, I think a lot of these barriers can be caused by, age or lack of resources, lack of income, lack of education. And so to get that diverse population recruited into your position, to get the most qualified candidates, you need to get that big pull. And so just reaching out to those populations and saying, hey, we want you here. How can we help you make this a success? It just really helps them out. And as an organization, again, I think we'll focus on the apprentices, but as an employer or an organization, it really helps you because now you have a much higher hiring pool and success rates. Next slide. So what are some best practices that have worked for us, have worked with our RAP partners, our employer partners? Number one, above all, is design your support services with empathy. So center that student, that new employee, and ask them what they need. Don't assume. We use intake assessment forms. I know a lot of our workforce partners, hiring agencies, state workforce boards, and employers use intake assessment forms to identify hidden barriers. Some people are very forthcoming and might say, oh, geez, it's really going to be hard for me to make it to the training class, or it might be really hard for me to find childcare that's on my drive to work, those types of things. So just using an intake form might find some hidden barriers that either people don't want to share or they might not even be aware of because they're new to the job. And offer flexibility. What works for one student, for one employee, does not work for everybody. So you can design these to be very individualized support services plans, where you can say, okay, if a person meets this threshold, we can assist with a gas card. If a person meets this threshold, we can connect with this service. Or you can do blanket offerings of different types of support services, use your intake assessment to steer the new apprentice to the support services that they need. I think another one that really ties in with empathy here, again, is apprentices are new to their trade, to the company, those types of things, right? Just by the nature of what an apprentice is. It's the new person. So really helping them and partnering them with a senior person that knows exactly what the job entails and what might hold that person back is so important. A new person might not think about this is going to be a 12-hour day. A new person might not be thinking about they're going to need, sunscreen and bug spray and, all of these maybe other personal hygiene items, for lack of a better term. But someone who's been with the company doing the work for 10, 15, 20 years, they know those small tricks of the trade. And so I would also say, remember that they're new, have empathy for that. And just sometimes supportive services can really look like saying, hey, do you have some bug spray? You're going to need that tomorrow. Hey, do you have a good pair of steel-toed boots? Because we're going to need you to have that. Just asking folks and opening up that dialogue and designing all of your supportive services with, that individual's needs in mind is extremely important. And it's the easiest thing that you can do. Next slide. So second thing, partnership is power. Once you've identified the barriers that a person might need in their new job, in their apprenticeship, you don't have to do it all yourself. That leads to compassion fatigue. That's extra work. That's stress. I guarantee you that you have wonderful neighbors, no matter what neighborhood you're in. You have wonderful folks in your community organizations that are already specialists in that. An example would be in my area, there is a local clothing closet that offers brand new work boots. And if they don't have the boots that you need, they have vouchers. They order those for the people. That way they're ready to go, ready to work, brand new boots. I don't always have the ability to buy everyone a set of brand new boots. So I partner with that local clothing closet. When I have a need, I send them over there. When someone comes into their clothing closet and says, oh, I'm shopping for some interview clothes, I'm looking for a new job, I'm not sure what I want, the clothing closet might send them over to me to do some career exploration. So it benefits both organizations, it benefits the person. And that's just one example of, in my community, one group, and there are just hundreds that are doing just amazing work. So leverage those community-based organizations that are local to you, that are doing childcare, that are providing workwear, that are doing interview training, any other food pantries. It's always surprising to me when I find a new group in my community and they specialize in those things. You can work with those groups to have formal memorandums of understanding, to determine how are we going to help people together. It can just be a handshake. It can be, loose. But thinking about food pantries and housing organizations, especially if you're recruiting for people outside of your local area, childcare providers, the list goes on. The needs are great, and someone is out there specializing in filling that need. You do not have to be a specialist in filling that need. Another great place to look for partnership to help people overcome barriers are your local workforce boards. The workforce boards are, they have so many specialists on staff throughout your region, your state, and their entire careers are based around helping other people obtain these great careers, right? And so if you can partner a local workforce board or organization and all of those nonprofits or community-based organizations that are providing specific support programs, it just builds a stronger workforce pipeline. I think at West Virginia Women Work, even though I think we might be best known for our pre-apprenticeship training programs, I think this is what my organization and my staff really is amazing at, is connecting the pieces. So they'll connect a workforce person that has maybe someone that's come in that's unemployed looking for a career. They'll help that person do some career exploration. They'll pull in, a local childcare group. They'll pull in, a food bank, and we'll get everyone the supports that they need to be successful. My group is just amazing at connecting all those dots. And it's really helped us succeed in not just enrolling people into our program and seeing them graduate, but preparing them to do direct entry into registered apprenticeship programs, in the skilled trades, manufacturing, uh, healthcare industries, entry-level positions. Just connecting people to resources is workforce pipeline. That's developing a workforce. So partnership is power, and you do not have to be a specialist. Next slide, please. So if you are going to do some of these things in-house, or you want to, add to your training, your supportive services, how do you do that? Funding this strategically. So we use a lot of braided funding. There's no one silver bullet where we're able to provide boots and tools and childcare and training and everything that someone needs to succeed. So we leverage those community-based organizations. Again, for example, a local food bank, they have funding to provide food to folks. So if you already have someone that's specializing in that and has a good funding stream, rely on those folks to do the work. If you have state programs or federal programs, another example would be for us. We partner with our local DHS for their SNAP employment and training program that helps get people clothing allowances and mileage stipends. If you're familiar with WIOA, it's the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act. That is for different types of folks can receive training subsidies to go to trade schools or enter into apprenticeship programs. But it also provides them with, again, transportation allowances, maybe the safety gear, boots, tools that they need to enter a new career. We also work with a lot of private foundations to fund this. So anytime we see funding gaps from all of these other organizations, we reach out to private foundations. I will say that we've been very lucky as well, and it's a nice cyclic relationship, I guess, with private employer partners that have apprenticeship programs. They invest in our training programs, they invest in our supportive services programs, and then they also hire our graduates and have long-term employees. So use braided funding streams, look to local, state, federal groups, employers that are actually hiring your graduates or use them as part of their labor force. Track when you use your funding streams for this, it's super important to track the return on investment, because you want to justify that continued support. And if you're offering supportive services, you will see an increase in all success metrics that you track. We, joke our program is called Step Up. And we tell our students, hey, we've provided you with the boots. You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And they truly do it. So tracking your return on investment and showing that these support services really offer benefits to your groups, and reporting that back to your funders frequently and strategically, that really helps to fund the continued success of these programs. Next slide, please. So on to tracking there. So you have a funder or you have a partner you're working with, you're offering these supportive services, and tracking that impact and really talking about what's working and what's not. I will say a lot of folks try to steer away from, well, what's not working? Let's not just talk about that. Let's just talk about the success, right? I don't think so, because what's not working is a barrier for you. And when you're talking about supportive services, you can't talk about that without barriers. And there's no sense in offering something that doesn't work for your organization, your company, or the people that you're serving and the folks that you're trying to train and create a success with, right? So especially in a registered apprenticeship program or a pre-apprenticeship program, I've listed here a few metrics that I think everyone should track, which would be your registered apprenticeship enrollment and completion rates, your job placement rates, the demographics of folks that you're serving. One that we've recently started tracking are just barrier reductions achieved. You might train 40 people in your apprenticeship program and place, and they're now no longer apprentices, they've completed and they're successful employees, right? That might have taken 20 hurdles that you had to jump alongside your student, right? So I realized that we weren't capturing all of the work that the students did to overcome those hurdles, that our staff were doing to help them overcome those challenges, our partners. And so one person, again, might be 20 barriers that you've got over. So I think that's a great one to track. And then you can use that data to advocate for more support, whether that's funding or more partnerships, reaching out to new partners and saying, hey, we've provided this in the past and we saw a 20% increase in completion of the apprenticeship program, or retention of graduates. People work for our company are promoted 3 times faster. Whatever that data that you have captured, make sure to share it with your partners and advocate that more support, more partnership, working together, and also allow them to brag with you, whether they were part of the program or they just want to share in your success. Folks need to know what works. And I think that's just as important as educating about what a registered apprenticeship is. I've provided a link here to our 2024 annual report. It was just a wonderful year. We provided, I think, probably more supportive services to students in our pre-apprenticeship program than ever. We really saw true success with that. I'll give a brief example too of something new that we've been doing. So it's always hard when you're doing classwork, especially, to stay awake. I don't know about you guys, but staying awake in, history class was always rough for me. And a lot of our students were getting tired. And we realized it was because they weren't eating right and they weren't eating enough. They weren't packing a lunch to make it through an 8-hour day. And so we partnered with a local university, their agriculture extension program, to do some outreach. Once a week, we had a speaker come in to talk about nutrition, what that would look like on the job site, specifically for the construction industry, that you're not always near a restaurant that you can go to. And so you need to pack that lunch. It's hard physical labor, so you do not need to be calorie conscious. If anything else, you need to eat higher calories. So we educated them on what eating right in your new job looks like. And we also provided them with probably a bit of junk food, if I'm honest, that was available if they needed lunch. We also partnered with some places that provided free lunch in the community. And so you could grab a protein bar to get you through the lunch hour if you were unable to provide your own lunch, or you could go to a local community center where there were free lunches, food box, those types of things. So we went from folks not being able to focus and learn what we needed them to learn in class that day because they were hungry. You cannot teach hungry people, they do not retain that information. Once we were able to connect those people with snacks, lunch provided to them free of charge, and then food education on how to, properly eat for the day, we saw people being awake. We saw people just their test scores increased. And I will say for me and our staff here that our teachers were much happier because they had students that were interacting and awake and ready to work. So that was just a small, it cost us next to nothing for some protein bars and some soup, cans of soup, just small things like that. We saw a huge return on investment in that. And I think it made our students better, our programs better, and our staff much happier. So track the smallest impacts and get creative. Next slide, please. So an example of supportive services for our pre-apprenticeship programs, we call them wraparound supports. So folks enter our program and we provide them with their work boots, all of the safety gear that they need to be in our program, hard hat, glasses, hearing protection. We give them a clothing allowance. So they might not have, a couple pairs of jeans that they can spare to getting caked in mud or paint, or maybe burn a hole in them in their welding class. So we provide that. We do mileage reimbursement or gas cards, rideshare reimbursement. We partner with local childcare agencies and we can refer them to childcare services, mental health and behavioral health. One thing we've talked about is we really try to support folks, but sometimes when we're talking about barriers, the conversation gets heavy, and we are not trained therapists or psychologists. We can't diagnose if you're a bit hyper, and so making sure that we connect people with those services while we're in the program. And we work really hard to find those services that are low cost, free of charge, meet the financial level of the student that's in need while they're in our class. So again, everything that they need during class to be set up for success. When our students graduate and enter into a registered apprenticeship program, sometimes there can be cost to that, especially in the skilled trades. For example, we have a registered apprenticeship program that we work with that requires on their first day, they have about $250 worth of tools in a tool belt and a locking toolbox, a specific tool set. So if you graduate our program, we will buy those tools for you. We'll buy any specific safety gear that you need for that job, whether it's carpenter to manufacturing to any skilled trades or manufacturing. If there are dues or fees or any costs like that that are associated with entering into the registered apprenticeship program, my organization supports people by paying for that. And the result of that is we have a 75% completion rate and a 70% placement rate. For every one, I'm able to go back to our funders and our community partners and report that for every $1 invested, our students' wages increase alone returns $2.25 to our local economy. And I love this number because the more supportive services we have added, we have seen this number increase year over year. So over $624,000 of annual earnings increase for our graduates. That's huge. That's over $500,000. And we've seen that steadily go up as we've done better at either providing support services or connecting our students to those supportive services. Next slide. So an example we recently had was one of our graduates, Mariah. She was amazing in class. She was always there, ready to learn, great personality, showed up on time. One of those dream employees or, just great student. But working with her through a barriers assessment, I think some of the things she was concerned about was she had been in recovery and she had several felony charges and, was working a night shift job. And so she had a lot of barriers holding her back from not just completing our program, but entering a successful apprenticeship. So throughout the program, she got a lot of mentorship and one-on-one support. Of course, she got all of the personal protective equipment, boots, clothing that she needed to be in the program. We were able to give her mileage reimbursement to offset her travel costs to and from class. And then she got one-on-one tutoring to help her prepare for the electrician's apprenticeship exam so that she could enter into our IBEW's local registered apprenticeship program. And if you haven't taken a peek at that test, it's some pretty intense math. And so there was a lot of tutoring. So just that empowerment and that one-on-one and that personalized approach, I'm so excited. Mariah aced her test. She's entering her IBEW Registered Apprenticeship Program in August of 2025. And because of that, we're taking care of her tools, her safety boots, her initiation fees, the first 90 days of her union dues. And so she is proof. And Mariah is just one of hundreds of women over 25 years this story has repeated. With those wraparound supports, her determination and hard work, these opportunities change lives. So we were able to move someone who had been in recovery, had, been impacted by the justice system, was very concerned about felony charges associated with that was working as a janitor's assistant in a low-paying job. Now she's entering an apprenticeship, and I want to, don't quote me exactly on this, but I think she's close to $20 an hour for her starting rate. So, and that's just take-home pay. That's not all of the benefits. So this is a life-changing opportunity for her with just a small amount of support. Next slide. Again, Mariah is just one of many. We have so many of our students, and I think the amazing thing is our students go off, they enter registered apprenticeship, they become journey work, they complete their apprenticeship program, and 5-10 years down the road, they're extremely successful senior workers. They come back and mentor the new pre-apprentices entering registered apprenticeship programs. So again, I truly believe the supportive services not only contribute to the success of these folks, but it's what bring them back to do what they can to help empower the next group. And these are just some quotes from some of our students. And we have truly seen people go from homelessness to buying their home in less than 4 years. We've seen them go from service jobs at, fast food restaurants, making minimum wage to making $17 an hour just within our 12-week program. This is just a game changer for people that might not have had access to these careers. And that's what the supportive services do. They help them overcome the barriers so that they have access to the registered apprenticeship programs and are able to be amazing workers and give back to their communities. Next slide. So, lessons learned over 25 years of our pre-apprenticeship program, providing supportive services, feedback from our employer partners and registered apprenticeship programs that we work with. We have really learned that these are not extras. They are absolutely essential. If supportive services aren't offered or you aren't able to connect people with those services, your success rates drop, and that's just not good on any side. Programs that don't address these barriers really do risk a high dropout. And so it's great if you can get 50 people on day one, but how many people do you get to complete your apprenticeship program? That's what's really important. If 0 make it to the finish line, the entire program has failed. It's failed the company and it's failed the folks in there. Trust, flexibility, and consistency really are key. Letting folks know that you're able to, offer these things or connect them with people that help, and having one-on-one conversations are just vital. Next slide. So how can you help? Share registered apprenticeship awareness materials. Again, can't provide support services if no one is in registered apprenticeships. So just letting folks know that, you can go to college, you can go to community college, you can go to trade school. You can also do apprenticeship programs and other earn while you learn models. Partner for support services. Once you get folks into an apprenticeship program, work with community-based organizations. They're passionate about what they do, whether it's providing food or mental health services. Partner with those folks and connect people in your apprenticeship programs to those support services. Advocate for funding, not just for your program, but for the community-based organizations that support you. So if the food bank that has helped some of your folks out comes to you and says, hey, could you provide a letter of support saying that, we could really utilize this funding? Do that. Refer potential students. Shout out from the rooftops. Social media. A few of my staff are guilty of chit-chatting with people in the supermarket and probably pestering all their kids and nieces and nephews and just telling everyone about apprenticeship. Just letting folks know that it's out there. And the last thing I would say is challenge misconceptions. Again, I think there's been this lingering, earn while you learn, and apprenticeship programs are only for low-paying jobs. And I can tell you that as the executive director of a nonprofit, I do not make journeyman electrician wages. My husband is a journeyman electrician and makes much more than me. So, just shouting that out there, that it's hard, that it's only physical work, that it's only the trades, it's only manufacturing. It's absolutely not. There are so many industries out there that have that. So share, partner, advocate, refer, and challenge. Next slide. So I think we're ready for some questions and answers.
Hopefully everybody can hear me and see me again. Thank you so much for that amazing presentation. I'm glad we gave you plenty of time to share so much of your amazing firsthand experience and then some really great concrete examples of what you've done, what other folks can do. We have about 10 minutes to go over some questions. So folks that are listening along, please send in questions in the chat or through social media directed at net.America. And the first one I saw, and kind of starts at the beginning of an apprentice's journey, is about intake and entry points for apprentices. So what sort of intake tools or assessments, or even informal, what kind of intake processes does your organization kind of conduct in order to assess what a participant might need in order to succeed?
We have a very simple form for, say someone applies to one of our training programs or our mentorship program, any of our programs really. Immediately we send out an intake form and we keep it very casual. We use language that you use in conversation. The form is not complicated. So it just sort of says hey, new friend, what are you struggling with? It's that kind of vibe. And so in that form, it might say, any of the following: food insecurity, housing issues, transportation issues, childcare issues. Would you like to be connected with a therapist? Or, are you in need of new glasses? So it's one page. It's very informal and it's a very friendly tone because, again, I think sometimes barriers can be extremely personal. And you want folks to talk to you about those because you want them to be a success. Sometimes it might be as simple as, oh, my poor car breaks down all the time. People are willing to share that, but there might be some other things that they aren't. And so we come at them with a simple form, very casual, and we follow that up with a conversation when they come in and interview for the class.
Thank you for that response. The second question I'm seeing is about how apprenticeship programs that operate on a smaller scale, maybe there's only 2 or 3 apprentices, or small community-based organizations, neighborhood associations, sort of focusing on like that micro level. Like, what are some small supportive services that an organization can provide if they don't have access to large funding streams and might not be able to kind of shoulder something that takes a little bit more planning, like childcare or like organizing transportation? What's like a good example of that?
Well, I can also say West Virginia Women Work is a pro at this one too, because for 25 years, we've made some amazing things happen on a shoestring budget. An example would be childcare. It's very expensive in most areas. It's not something that we're able to fund, 6 months of childcare for a new apprentice. However, just reaching out to our local childcare providers and throwing it out there, talking about discounts, priority seating, those types of things. Again, I think having conversations with groups in your community that already have funding for that or may be able to offer discounts. Also working with SBAs and other organizations in your community, which I'm happy to talk to anybody about. We'll find them in your area, about what funding they might have available for a support service you might want to offer. So find the folks that are already doing and funding to do that, or explore with, business organizations what funding might be available to you.
I think those are some really great like initial steps for folks to kind of take stock of like what's available in their community, because most often you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's already somebody in your neighborhood, in your community, that's doing that work. There's a third question that I'm going to go ahead and answer, and Carol, if you want to add anything, please do. So talking about registered apprenticeships in fields outside of construction, are there any programs or resources for someone who wants to find registered apprenticeships for those careers? And I'll jump in and refer you to apprenticeship.gov, which has a program search finder. So whoever's asking this question and interested in finding a program in their community, you can search by occupation and by zip code and find sort of like a contact list of things in your community. Carol, do you want to add anything about sort of apprenticeships beyond the construction industry?
Yeah, I'll say apprenticeship.gov is a great website and offers a lot of career exploration. And usually, most states will have an apprenticeship committee or that type of group that is specialized to just within your state apprenticeship programs that are, registered at state levels. So check those out.
The next question, and folks continue to send stuff in on the chat. The next question I'm seeing is, can you give an example of how braided funding has been used successfully to support participants in, a real registered apprenticeship program?
Absolutely. So, just in our programs alone, we have partnered with private funders that are interested in health and wellness. So, they're able to provide maybe some supportive services for the health and wellness aspect. Other funding streams provide for the actual training or, paying our rent, keeping the lights on. Then we're able to partner with, like, for example, we partner with a large energy company that is interested in hiring our graduates. And so they cover the cost of the students' textbooks and tools and those types of things. So no one funding stream, even for my program, covers the totality of what we do. And we just work with funders that have their own specific interests in what they want to, invest in and the results that they want to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really like a quilt of support with everyone.
We do. We call it a crazy quilt. And sometimes you have to tear the quilt apart and rework it. And that's
rework it. I wanted to ask a question that I jotted down while you were speaking about, I'm primarily a research specialist. So how does your organization collect information and sort of like follow along outcomes for folks? Because you referenced them and you mentioned how important they are to communicate success to like funding organizations, but how do you go about kind of collecting that information?
Well, since we're a DOL pre-apprenticeship and most a registered pre-apprenticeship, you have to have that structure, and that's what I love. I love structure, and that's what's best about apprenticeship is you do have these check-ins. And so for our program, particularly when someone applies, we collect some data about them. We do our intake assessment, and then we have structured check-ins, very formal, every 2 weeks throughout our program. We're making sure that they're getting the training they need, what resources they've connected with, what support services we've provided, credentials that they've earned, and compiling that all in, a data software system. And we're able to say, this person has moved from this stage with these types of credentials and income. And with all of these supports and education, they now have these credentials and this income. And so making those check-ins for each individual person and recording those is extremely important.
I want to give folks another minute to maybe 30 seconds to add any final questions in the chat for this event that we can go over. So I'll give it a wind down. But as we're, fielding any last questions, I just want to say thank you so much again for taking the time and for giving such a great presentation about what you do and all the examples of how it's been successful, and really like telling that story of how you can go from not even knowing what an apprenticeship is to finding yourself in this career and all the steps along the way. So I'm very appreciative, and I know a lot of the attendees are. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'll kind of give my closing speech. This presentation is recorded and it's going to be available on the net.America website in the next couple days. So please refer back to it. If you have colleagues or friends that you want to refer this to, feel free to direct them to net.America's website. If you're interested in getting involved in apprenticeship as a career seeker or as an employer, please reach out to net.America. Tierney's linked the website in the chat. So, please get connected in any way. We love to talk apprenticeship. So I just want to thank all of our attendees, and please reach out if there's any further questions.